Hi, my name is John Navarro, and I did this project with Avery Bautista, Alina Serrano, and Chance Walker. And our presentation is on how did the US policy change towards Latin America? Due to the Great Depression and global economic instability, the US was negatively affected. The US economy was negatively affected by that at the time. So they had to find another way to keep Latin America under control because it was military intervention was too expensive and not very effective. So President Franklin D. Roosevelt, as you can see over here, implemented the Good Neighbor policy, which pretty much was the U.S. not using military intervention and more starting to use dollar diplomacy, relying on dollar diplomacy. So they would do stuff like sign sweetheart treaties, which gave the U.S. Financial and economic control over places like Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and they would pull out soldiers from certain countries, like Alina will talk about in the next slide. And this all stopped due to at the beginning of the Cold War due to the rise of communism because the U.S. had to intervene with some rising communist parties in Latin America. So this is a poster talking about to promote the Good Neighbor policy. And again, here is Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Hi, I'm Alina, and I'm talking about Nicaragua. So, Nicaragua is a Latin American country in North America, and the situation in Nicaragua basically tested the limitations of the Good Neighbor policy that Chandra taught us about in the last slide. So, in Nicaragua, there were a lot of civil wars occurring, and which led to a lot of US occupation and intervention with their US Marine forces. So, this sparked a lot of outrage in Nicaraguan nationalists, especially with a man named Augusto Cesar Sandino. And the US responded to the outrage by taking the US Marines out of Nicaragua, but instead they established the Guardia Nacional to replace the Marines. And the Guardia Nacional basically maintained the power in Nicaragua. The US also supervised elections to elect a man named Juan Batista Sacasa as president. And Sacasa implemented Anastasio Somoza Garcia to lead the Guardia Nacional as commander. And then the Guardia Nacional assassinated Sandino. And Somoza eventually took over as president, and with his presidency, he kept the relations with the U.S. very friendly and positively. He even named a road in Nicaragua's capital after Franklin D. Roosevelt. And basically, with this, so the U.S. influence in Nicaragua continued without any military intervention.
Hi, I'm Avery Bautista, and this is Cardenas' Mexico. So, in December of 1933, the U.S.'s authority over Latin America changed when Secretary of State Cordell Hull signed the Convention on the Rights and Duties of States. This new document declared that no state had the right to intervene in the affairs of another, essentially renouncing the effects made by the Monroe Doctrine. During this time, the Constitution of 1917 gave Mexico ownership of their own underground natural resources. This, along with the unfair payment of Mexican workers by foreign companies, caused Mexican President Lázaro Cárdenas to give the Mexican state control over the oil industry. This led FDR to demand that Mexico pay the foreign oil companies $260 million. However, under the wake or context of World War I, the U.S. did not do any other actions as they did not want to brew up more conflict. Mexico, though, only paid $24 million, as Cardenas based this on the tax values affirmed by those oil companies. Here for my photos, on the very top is a picture of U.S. Secretary of State Cordell Hull. On the very bottom is Mexican President Lázaro Cárdenas, and on this bottom link is what I used for the causes of Mexican nationalization of the oil industry.
Hi, I'm Chance, and I'm going to be talking about the neighborly cultural exchanges. So, to start, the Great Depression of World War I led to international relationship declines. However, the U.S. still wants to have that positive relationship with Latin America, so they stayed away from military behavior just in case there was a potential war, also known as World War II, so they could still have the support from their neighbors. Agricultural business industries encouraged Mexicans to migrate for cheap labor, even though a lot of Americans were against the idea of this. The U.S. also had a very positive representation of Latin American culture shown in the pictures. And a main example was Carmen, and she was raised in Brazil, and she was an actor known in a very famous movie known as Down Argentine Way. She became a very big icon and was known for her very bright colors, and the Latin Americans had a positive light on in American culture. Thank you for listening, and now we're gonna ask some questions.